So hello, my name is Frederick Dunn, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to make comb honey. Now I get asked this question a lot. Do I prefer hog halves or Ross rounds? Well, these are Ross rounds. I'm going to show you how to put them together, and I'm going to take you through the entire process, including putting them on beehives and harvesting and packaging at the end. It's an amazing thing. These plastic things are an invention of Tom Ross shortly after World War II in the United States. It's a method for allowing the bees to make comb honey in pre-packaged plastic rings. These white plastic rings, you get 2 of them in the kit. I paid for this kit. I bought it from betterbee.com. Full price, no affiliation. And now I'm going to walk you through it. This is how they come with the plastic rings pre-installed actually when you first get the kit. And the kit comes with a wooden case around it. Now the foundation that goes in here is 100% beeswax. It's edible. Different than foundation because as you can see my fingers through it, it is very thin. The whole point of it is to simply sandwich it between the Ross rounds, put the pieces together, and hope that the honey bees will start to build their comb out from this foundation. And it's using bee space. In other words, these plastic guards on either side of these inserts will keep the bees from just drawing out the comb and connecting it to the next frame. So it is very different, and you have to get a frame that's made just for Ross rounds, or you're going to have to custom make your own because they don't match up. I let it stick out beyond the plastic frame here, but I'm going to bend that over later because I want the bees to use that as an enticement to start to work the frames. And you can see that they key together in a very easy way. You really don't need a lot of instruction to know how to do this. The other thing is, of course, make sure your hands are clean and everything else, but what's going to happen when you put it in the beehive? The bees are going to lick it and sanitize every surface with their antibacterial properties, as they always do. So going in, just make sure you have all clean new material. There are 4 Ross rounds per frame, and they come in 8 frame or 10 frame because they match up with standard Langstroth equipment. Now, why on earth would you use a Ross round comb honey system? Well, for starters, it saves you from creating cut comb yourself, and the bees package it for you. This is how the foundation comes. Again, make sure you're sourcing this knowing that it's going to be used in Ross rounds. This is the wooden case that comes when you order the kit. And I, of course, have finished that with 3 layers of exterior varnish. And the inside has these spacers built in, and then there's only one movable side panel, and it's going to be held on with spring clips. Remember to fold over any extra foundation that's sticking up at the top or at the bottom because there isn't a lot of space above it or beneath it when you put this on a beehive. Pack them in nice and tight. We're going to put them all together, and I'm going to put that spacer board in there. And then I'm going to show you how to install the spring clips. So we put the spring clips in here right on top of that protrusion of the frame, which pushes them all together nice and snug without warping the wood. This looks like it's going to last for many years. And I'm going to walk you through it all. This is not a quick video, obviously. It's going to go for about 30 minutes, and that's because I'm going to try to answer all the questions. When you need to pull these out, you just use your hive tool with the J hook on the end of it. Now, when we go out in the bee yard, as with any honey harvesting piece of gear, we want to look at the colony that's got the most production going on. We also want them to have the resources necessary to get through winter. Here in the state of Pennsylvania, I have them with at least 2 boxes, 1 deep, 1 medium, before I put anything else on. The top box there is just a feeder shim, so that's empty. Here's a colony that's nice and strong, 10 frame colony. It looks like a candidate for a Ross round frame. So I'm just out here. There is a nectar flow on, so the bees are pretty friendly. I'm not wearing a full bee suit. Just going to pull this apart and, of course, install the Ross round frame. Now, I didn't just put this on one hive, by the way. I like to go out and do several at a time. There are 19 colonies in this apiary in northeastern United States, the state of Pennsylvania, Great Lakes region, 1,300 feet above sea level, and we're in agricultural zone hardiness 4. Here we go. Just going to put this one on here. As with many of my other experiments, I don't just do one because I don't want to be left with nothing in the end. So I put on 2 8-frame size and 2 10-frame size. Then I want to use a well-worn in inner cover there because I want the bees to smell that propolis and burr comb that's in there, and that will entice them to move up into this Ross round box.
Huge amount of work.
It's that simple. Just wearing a veil today.
And that's it. Now they'll make their honey in the Ross rounds.
Now here's another one. This is a Flow Hive 2 8-frame, so it's much smaller. And the dark hunter green colored box there is another Ross round box. It's the one that we're going to use to evaluate Ross rounds and to give you a step-by-step demonstration of how to deal with them. So this is on here. We need to come and inspect. Now these were installed on June 28th, and we're doing this check on September 8th. Also, there's a rapid round feeder in here that has not been used. That's on for winter use at the end of the year or early spring buildup. Don't feed any supplemental syrups when you're going to harvest honey, or in this case, comb honey in Ross rounds. So it's just a placeholder for now, and it plugs that hole so the bees can't get up there. So I'm going to pull off the inner cover. I like to use 2 hive tools for this process, and I'm trying to pull it up nice and careful. Notice that I've changed my outfit a little bit. There were some defensive guard bees out there in the apiary. And we can see that the bees have put burr comb all over the top of this. And that's good because they're working it. They went right in there. And we're going to show you, first of all, how to get your bees out of your Ross round super, so that you can start to process the comb honey that's in there. We're going to need to use a bee escape. But first, let's get a close look at these bees and make sure that they're drawing out the comb. I like to squirt them with sugar syrup with a little bit of Honeybee Healthy in it. And notice I'm not squirting it on the Ross round frames. I'm squirting it in that space down between because I'm trying to occupy the bees down below. You may also notice I'm not using any smoke. On hot days like this, I'd much rather use sugar syrup and Honeybee Healthy than smoke because it doesn't get the same reaction from the bees. They stay calm, and it doesn't stop them from producing and storing honey, which is interesting, and it's what we want them to do this time of year. As you can see, they're all very calm, and if we look inside these white plastic rings, we can see that they have drawn out their own honeycomb. So these are looking pretty good. They weren't completely capped on the outside frames, but I felt like I needed to go ahead and do this video, so we're going to pull this particular one a little prematurely. The other 3 will remain on the hives right through September, and we'll pull them off in the last week. So remember now what we have to do is get them out of this super. And the box underneath, that minty green color, hand painted by yours truly, is also full of honey and comb, and I tried to pull it off smooth, but of course the propolis snapped on me and I moved it too fast. A couple of bees did bite the dust here on this, and you'll notice too those center wooden frames there are better comb, which I put in just to help them. Back in the beginning of the year, they have lots of honey on. This is an escape board, pretty standard traditional wooden escape board. Bee escape is another thing it's called. Put it on like this, they go down through the hole. They find it difficult to navigate back through those triangular exits there, and it will give us enough time before they learn their way around. You don't want to leave one of those things on for a very long time. We're going to have to leave it on for 24 hours to get the bees out of there so we can harvest our comb honey. And of course, lots of bees still up there, even inside that rapid round because it's empty. Try not to chop up any bees here. I don't want to hear the crackle of death when I close the boxes together or this inner cover. And that is a Flow Hive brood box on the bottom. Nothing else is flow related other than the stand. So those things are interchangeable too. You can use them for other stuff. So I won't be putting a Flow Super on this box. I'm only using it for this comb honey. In the inner cover, feeder shim, close it up, leave it there, hope they leave. And just a look at the outside temperature here, 72 degrees. This was September 6th, so a couple days before we pulled it back off. And we had light rain, so we got into kind of a moderate dearth this summer. Not great, because it kind of halted what they were doing at the beginning of the year, which was really fantastic. And even egg production was low from the queens. So some of our numbers went down. They did not fill things as quick as they did last year at this time. And our Flow Supers, by the way, are doing extremely well. They're 90% full, and I'll have to drain those off also during the next week here before we start to shut them down in preparation for fall and winter. So there's still some bees you'll notice on top there, but not as much as we would have had to deal with if we just pulled this off in the beginning. Now, if we were just pulling frames of honey, we could pull it out frame by frame and shake the bees off. But having the bee escape certainly helped. They reduced those numbers by about 90%. And then I just take that and put it in a shed, darken everything up, and leave one window open, a source of light. The bees will follow that source of light and leave the shed. A few squirts of reward sugar syrup down there, just so they know that the visit was a good one when I came out. I'm going to pull the bee escape off. And of course I came out prepared with another box of drawn comb so the bees can continue to store their winter resources. And look at all the bees that are underneath this bee escape. I'm going to have to put that down on the landing board so they can find their way back into the hive. And they did that in about an hour's time to where the board was empty of bees. So now we're just going to put this medium super on here. Again, I have 3 frames of better comb in there, which is pre-drawn, so that they can go immediately into storing that. We don't want them to hit a big nectar flow and swarm this time of year. So by providing fully drawn cells, we give them a place to put their resources, more space to go back into, because remember, these bees are accustomed to having a box up there. And as I said, in the middle of a really good goldenrod, clover, and asters are coming on, nectar flow. So we'll just get this situated in the front here. We don't want to just leave it on the side of the hive, for example. When they're leaning against the landing board, they get the pheromone from the landing board bees, and they walk right in there, and they're good to go. The other thing is I'm swapping out the cover now in preparation for winter, putting a polystyrene insulated cover on, which has 7 times the insulation value of a wooden cover. And of course, don't forget to strap it down. So now it's ready for whatever the weather throws at it. We've had some storms come through, but we are still way behind as far as rainfall goes this year. This, of course, is the bee escape leaning on the front, just to show you all the bees underneath and see how they travel through and out. Now, if we left that on for several days, bees are smart. Eventually, they figure out even those reverse angles and go back in. Now we're on the kitchen table. All the bees are gone. And it's the following morning. And these are the Ross rounds still in their frames. And the other thing is, I don't want to clean off this burr comb because I'm going to use these frames again. We're just going to replace the foundation and we can put them right back on. I think it's too late this year to start another hive, but next year in the spring, I will find another strong hive that I want to use for developing comb honey, and we'll put these frames right back on with brand new white inserts. So I've just laid down newsprint on the table here, double thick, just so that I don't mess up my harvest table. And we're going to pull the clips out of the sides there so we can start to pull these things out and see what we have. So the bees really did go right after them. Other people I've heard reports from that they had 0 luck with Ross rounds. I don't know why my bees do such a good job both with Flow Supers and Ross rounds in this case. This is my first year with comb honey like this. In the past, I would have just let them draw out their own foundationless frames, and then you have cut comb. But this is interesting because the bees fill the space themselves. Look at all the propolis sealant they did there. And I'm also going to show you what to do with those that did not fill out the frames completely. Now these are some hive tools that were sent to me by Jeremy James, who's a viewer, and I really appreciate it. These are made by the Honeystead, which is another YouTube channel where they do a lot with bees. I was really impressed with this finish. I even looked it up and found out that this finish on these hive tools can handle, depending on which one you get, up to 1700 degrees. So they sent me gold colored and copper colored here. And again, those are from Jeremy James, but they're made by the Honeystead. And the Honeystead, when they sent them to me, also included some of their own honey. So that was pretty cool, and I really appreciate that. And I'm going to set these hive tools aside and use them exclusively for my Ross rounds and things like that. So here we go. This was obviously not finished. So the ones on the outside there are a fail. Can't use them. What you can do with those is put them back out, let the bees clean them up, and reclaim the honey that's in those cells. There's nothing else really I would recommend doing with those. The other thing is when you're putting your hive tool in between these plastic frames, it's the first one that really needs that. Just be careful not to poke it into that capped honey. Now we can see this one here, not capped all the way. What do you do with that? You give it to your friends and relatives. That's what you do. But the others, look at the capping on that. And then on the end, again, not usable. So it's up to you. Feed that back. Make chunk honey with it. Use it yourself. Crush it. Drain it. And of course, get the water percentage nice and low. Now these are looking good. Those are mostly capped. And the one on the end there, not awesome. Keep in mind, I'm not a commercial beekeeper. I'm not going to sell these to a local store or anything, but I am going to have a pile of these this year. These were the ones that I pulled earlier, remember. The rest are going to stay on the hives until they're finished out completely. But I'm going to end up with a lot of Ross rounds here. And the interesting thing you may like to know also is that that Flow Hive 2 8-frame size that these were put on were Saskatraz bees. They were installed this past spring as a package. So this shows you how fast they built up, what great wax workers they are. And if you'll notice too that a skateboard that I pulled out, it had only been on for 24 hours and they were already waxing that up with burr comb. And here you can see the second one over. I damaged that with my hive tool. Cautionary tale, don't poke your hive tool in there. But the cap cells are fantastic. Notice that some of the cells on the outer edge there are really large. One of the members of our beekeeping association said, oh, it looked like they're building drone comb out there. But they really aren't. What happened is the foundation, if we have the cells on the foundation lined up awkwardly near the edges of those rings, they just fill them out to larger diameter cells, and it just has to do with the alignment and how the bees built them up. They didn't do any larvae. There's no egg laying going on up in here, and there again I did not use a queen excluder. That comes up often. People would put a queen excluder to make sure that the queen does not lay eggs up in the cells when the bees draw out this comb. That would make it not usable. But remember, there's another box under this box that had honey already in it. I call that a honey bridge, and the queen is very unlikely to go up into the top box and start to lay eggs. So you take a complete risk when you use when you go without a queen excluder. But for me, when you use the queen excluder, it slows things way down. And the honey production is just ridiculously good, especially considered we had a recent dearth that I mentioned before. And just take a sharp knife here and slice the extra pieces of the foundation off. Remember to get the foundation that is marked and identified for Ross rounds or hog halves or whatever you're using. Now when people ask me, do you like hog halves or Ross rounds? I like Ross rounds. It doesn't mean that you can earn more money from them. It just means I like the way they look. I like the way the bees use them. And some people look at the cap wax there and say, why is some of it really white and other parts of it kind of dark to where you can see into the honey? That just has to do with how much cap wax the bees deposited on that. The whiter, the thicker. And if you can see honey color through it, that's just thinner cap wax there. So here it is, packaged by the bees completely. So this is really a marvel to look at. Now you have a choice. You can have 2 clear covers for this, or you can have one white opaque back for it. I prefer to do both clear because anyone that you're going to give this to, or if you're using it as a teaching tool, for example, I want people to be able to see both sides of it. If anybody's going to spend money on something, I want them to see the cap wax on both sides, what the cells are like. Now, one of the differences between the Ross rounds and the hog halves is the Ross rounds, of course, have the foundation in the middle, and they build out on both sides. The hog half is a half, which means the foundation is on one side, and they build out to one side with one cap cover. These labels I got also from Better Bee, and I have to tell you, not happy with the label's adhesion ability. These things came off many times. The tips start to raise out so they don't adhere very well. And you might be looking at this going, Fred, it's all wrinkly. It looks like you're not doing a very good job of putting that label on there. And I say to you, if you make a few mistakes, leave a few wrinkles on things, it makes people more comfortable around you. Also, there's no doubt this wasn't put on by some kind of machine. This was done by human hands. How much of that honey in there has been touched by human hands? How much of that comb? None of it. This is a perfect hands-off method for creating comb honey. Different from cut comb, because remember, we didn't cut it out to make it. The bees put it in these containers themselves. That's the tiny miracle about it. So this guy, Tom Ross, he's a sharp cookie. Came out after World War II, discovered plastics, started experimenting with bees. No great surprise that these white rings look like they were cut from a plastic pipe. And just a convenient kind of found object format there, and they did some experimenting and ended up with Ross rounds. There are lots of commercial comb honey producers out there. How much can you get for one of these, do you think? Well, right now they're going anywhere from $12 to $14 a piece, and that's quite a lot, really. But they are a novelty, and people can chew them. It says 8 ounces on that. We're going to talk about that later, too. I'm going to tell you a little bit about labeling and what you have to say. This honey is a sample of nature's purest and most sweet food, has not been altered in any way, having been distilled from nectar and put in its container by the bees themselves. What's cooler than that? My wife already took one of these and gave it away. Can you believe that? Anyway, we're also going to weigh it, so stay with me on this. We're going to see how much that stuff weighs, and I'm also going to show you what to do with those that did not get completely capped. I'm going to tell you, too, what the requirements are for labeling, at least in my state. You should look up your own Department of Agriculture, Food and Drug. Find out what labels you have to put on it, even if you're selling directly to the consumer, which is all I would do. So if you're interested in this, please don't write me and ask to ship it. That's a whole different set of regulations, and I have to hand deliver this. The other thing is they tell you to put it in the freezer. That's what we're doing here. Load them right up. That's the alarm that says the door was open too long. Put them in the freezer 24 or 48 hours just to make sure there's no little bugs or eggs that went in there with it that could later come to life and start creeping through it and messing things up. Now this is one of the ones that failed, so I'm going to show you how to make chunk honey. Just going to get in here and cut it right out of the ring. This would not present well, I'm sure, as a Ross round if you tried to pass this off. I would caution you also, if you're trying to get a reputation as a beekeeper and you're going to be selling your honey and honey products, I would only sell your best stuff. I wouldn't put anything out there that's halfway there. And definitely don't use one of those opaque bottoms and cover up, like a bunch of uncapped cells, because your consumer is going to find that out later. So now I'm just going to bend it and put it in this jar. Now, if you were selling this stuff, you also wouldn't be handling it with your bare hands. You want to practice food safety. You'd be wearing food processor gloves. And just pour that pure, raw, unfiltered flow hive honey in there. How awesome does that look? Now this has really good curb appeal. Some people like to see whole honey in the jars like that. I mean, here's the thing. Why do people sell chunk honey, comb honey, hog halves, Ross rounds? Because there's no question that the bees made the cells and that the bees collected the honey and that the bees capped it. Nobody has found a way to fake that yet. And I picked my 15% water honey so that just in case some of that uncapped stuff was a little high in water content, it'll balance out with the honey I pour over it. So there you have a jar of chunk honey. Drawn comb, ready to go in a jar with honey poured around it. Now you've got all these from one super. What are you going to do with them? Well, what are the labeling requirements, and does it really weigh 8 ounces? We're going to find that out. Look at that. I just happen to have a triple beam balance scale. First thing we have to do, because we want it to be accurate, we're going to have to weigh the components before the bees worked it up and put their own wax in it. So we have a clear side and a ring, another clear side and a ring, and let's not forget the label. Then we zero out the balance scale so that the only thing we're going to weigh is what the bees put into it. There you have it. Now it says 8 ounces on it. You're required to put what the actual weight is. And what do we end up with? Well, it's heavier than 8 ounces. And if we leave it on 8 ounces, that's incorrect. Incorrect in a good way, though, because guess what it actually weighs? 9 ounces and over an eighth. So over 9 and an eighth ounces. So if it was labeled 8 ounces, you're not ripping anybody off. So it's actually heavier than that. What should be on a PA honey or pollen label? The common name. Raw honey, honey, whatever. The ingredients, honey, and in this case, honey and honeycomb. Manufacturing or processing address, that's you. And then the actual net weight. Also, it tells you that you don't have to register with them if you're selling directly to a buyer, so like a fruit stand at the end of your driveway. You can sell it. You still have to meet food safety requirements, and they can't come after you if somebody buys it directly from you and then reports you because you lied and filled it with blueberry juice or something. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you benefited from this, and I hope it answered all of those questions that you had about number 1, do I like Ross rounds or hog halves? I like Ross rounds. Number 2, how does it work? How do you do it? How do you package it? What is it? Thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please click the like button down below if you liked what you saw here today, and I invite you to subscribe to my channel for more in the future. Thanks a lot.